Hi there, welcome to Boa 54. I am Hawa and this is Ordinary People Africa. Ordinary People is a series containing interviews of ordinary men and women of Africa beating the odds in and out of Africa. In this series, I will be collaborating with Dear Diaspora, hosted by Undu. Dear Diaspora is a podcast celebrating African diaspora as change makers, innovators, and entrepreneurs working together to make the world the best place to live in. I would recommend checking out more of their content on your website at www.theirdiasporashow.com, and do check out the description box below for more information. Before we get started, if this is your first time, thank you for joining us. Our passion here at Boa 54 is to promote a positive Africa, one video at a time. If this sounds like anything you would love to be a part of, go ahead and join the family of Boa by hitting that subscribe button and notification bell next to it so you can keep learning about Africa and you don't miss anything. Also, most importantly, share this video and channel with your family and friends to help us promote a positive Africa. Be sure to check out Boa 54 merch. Every purchase that you make helps us produce this videos that you guys so much love. So let's get into the interview. A little disclaimer though, this is an audio interview, so take a listen.
Jamila Souffrant is the creator of the Journey to Launch podcast and blog. She is a savvy budgeter, money expert, and a certified finance education instructor. So she launched Journey to Launch to teach what she's learned over the years about all things personal finance. Her podcast has passed the 1 million download mark, which is super amazing, and was named one of the 27 podcasts you need to start listening to in 2018 by BuzzFeed. She is also the resident financial expert on a weekly segment on News 12. That's the most watched local TV news station in New York City. And she's also been featured in other notable media outlets such as Money Magazine, Time, Business Insider, Refinery 29, CNBC, Essence Magazine, and CBS. No big deal, right? And so be sure to subscribe to her podcast on Apple Podcasts. So the link to that is in the description. And follow her on social media. I really, really enjoyed this conversation with her. She was born in Jamaica and moved here as, I think she was 2 years old. And she just shares everything that her mom instilled in her growing up about being just super smart with money. And I can't wait for you all to listen to this conversation. So here is my chat with Jamila Souffrant. So Jamila, could you share a little bit about your journey from Jamaica to the U.S.?
Sure. So I came to the U.S. when I was about 18 months old from Jamaica. My mom, she actually came earlier. So she had me as 19 years old as a single mom, and she got the opportunity to come to the States, to Brooklyn, New York. But she couldn't bring me. My papers weren't even in or filed yet. So she came to the States to provide a better life for me, so that when I did reunite with her, she had some stable place and income. And so that's what she did. And I joined her at a few months later after she left. And with that, I came, and really it was just me and her. I had my grandmother and other people around, but it was really my mom who was my primary caretaker and who shaped and molded me to who I am today. She didn't have much, so a lot of my growing up was based on experiences. So she did what she had to do, and she always made sure that she put me first, sometimes at the detriment to herself. But that allowed me to really value money and experiences, which is evident kind of in the way I live my life now. And then the other great thing that she did, her and my grandmother, I would say, was they taught me how to save. So one of my earliest memories was her taking me to open up my first savings account at 6 years old. So I've been a saver ever since. The only thing is she didn't know anything about investing or growing money, but that's something I learned later on in life.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that. And what would you say growing up in Brooklyn was like for you, being, from Jamaica? Was it easy for you to adjust, or was it kind of hard in the beginning?
It was pretty easy because I came here young. I was under 2 years old when I came, so I didn't have to deal with the whole accent thing. It was funny because one of the things that happens when you had family back home. So I had like all my siblings were from my father. So my mom just had me at the time, but my father had a lot of other children, and I had cousins and my grandparents were there. So because in the summertime my mom had to work, she would send me to Jamaica every summer because she couldn't afford summer camp. So I'd go back to Jamaica often in the summers to reunite with my family, which was amazing. I have such fond memories of that. So really the transition wasn't that bad because like I kind of was raised American for the most part, but then I would go back on summer holidays to be with my family, and they would always look at me like, you know, you're American, you're not Jamaican kind of thing.
I can totally relate to that.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. And so if we could like fast forward a little bit to, like, I read on your blog that you bought your first property at 22. Could you share a bit more about some of the money habits that kind of helped you get that first property, and how, if there's anything that you learned, like from your mom, for instance, that was like, okay, I need to put away maybe this amount of money each time, and then, you know, hopefully someday I'll be able to, you know, spend it on something as valuable as a property.
Yeah. So I did buy my first, or put down for my first property at 22 years old, the down payment. I would say like a lot of things led into that. I think one was the saving part. So I got a job at 14. As soon as I can get my papers to work, I got a job at 14, and I always worked in the summertime, and I always saved money. But it wasn't until I got to college, so I got into a internship program called Inroads, which helped you get into Fortune 500 companies as an intern, and they also paid you really well. So those saving habits, when I was like earning maybe like $200 every other week or a month, when I was working summer, when I was in high school, it really helped when I became a college student, and now interning in the summers, I was earning a couple $1,000s. And so while the other interns that I was working with were so like happy and spent a lot of their money, I was like saving most of it. So I didn't know why I was saving it. Again, it was just I was a saver. So it was helpful because then by the time I graduated and I realized I wanted to buy something, I had some money saved up to help with that. And the reason why I even wanted to buy something was really looking at my grandmother and other people in the area that I grew up, because she came to the States with nothing herself. And as an older woman, when she came, especially when you're an immigrant, there's not much you can do. I mean, you know, there's some people who end up going go back and get a higher education. But for the most part, older women, they come and they either like clean houses or watch children. So she really hustled, and that's all she did. Like she became like a nanny for wealthy people. And she was able to buy a property through her hard work. And I remember the place that she bought was in downtown Brooklyn, kind of this place, Fort Greene, where when she bought it, no one like wanted to live there. And by the time I became a college student, it was like such a hot place to live, and it was, the value had appreciated so much. So it inspired me because I was like, wow, my grandmother can do this, and she hardly cares like about real estate. She just wanted a piece of the pie. Like I was like, I want to figure that out. So that's kind of what sparked in me the interest in real estate. And then because I was saving and looking at like I had some people in the neighborhoods, which is why representation and examples of people that are close to you matter. Because I think when you can see people doing something, and it allows you to see it's possible. And so I remember meeting a couple, what I like to call neighborhood millionaires. They were so unassuming, and they were older, but they had bought property in Bed-Stuy and Fort Greene at Brooklyn when no one wanted it. And then by the time I was of age and recognizing this, like their properties were worth so much. So I was like, okay, I need to do this. And eventually I did start looking for something while I was in college, and I couldn't afford anything what I really wanted was a brownstone. I couldn't afford it. So I saw this advertisement for new construction condos in this like area called Dumbo, which I had no idea where that was or what that meant, even though it was like 5 minutes from where I lived. And I went there with my mom, and it wasn't even built yet. It was just talking about how this area called Dumbo in Brooklyn was going to be the next big thing, and they were building this condo. And I was just like, okay, I saw the vision, I believed in it, and I actually was able to put down for a studio apartment. And my mom, so the big thing about that story is my mom actually helped me with that first 10%. So I put down some money, but she helped me like come up with the rest of the 10% so that I can secure this unit, and this unit was like the cheapest unit. It's the only, like, it's the cheapest thing I could afford in the building, was like a small studio. But I have to like give her credit for that, because she at that moment also didn't have much, but she was a saver, so she had money, and she recognized that her daughter had this unique opportunity, and so she like gave me a portion of that first 10%, and then 2 years later, after the condo was completed, so it was like a high story condo, I had to come up with the rest of the 10% and closing costs, which I was able to do because I was working, and I closed on my first property. And the area now, like, it came true. What it is like one of the most expensive places to own like real estate in Brooklyn and in New York. So I'm really just blessed that I was able to do that.
That's amazing. And thank you for sharing that. I think a lot of people, when they think of like investing in a property, they think like a house and not necessarily like a studio, for instance. So yeah, thank you for sharing that. I think that's going to open up people's minds for sure. And so what sort of tips do you have for a young person? Let's say they have a bunch of student debt, but they are still interested in investing in real estate, or, you know, buying their first house. Like, what's something practical they can do to kind of still, you know, balance paying off the debt, but then also put aside money for that investment?
Yeah, so I think all the stars really aligned for me with that purchase. You know, it was like the right time in the market, and, you know, I had some of the money available, and I had help like from my mom. So, you know, not everyone's situation is going to be like that. And I think the thing to realize is that if you're listening, you may not have had the same advantages or tools, right, that I had, but you have other tools and advantages. Like, everyone, if you're able to even listen to this podcast, you have some sort of an advantage. So I think the first step is to recognize that, and to see what you can use that you can leverage to get you to the next place in your life. If you're like young, now is the best time to start paying off debt. So getting out of debt as fast as you can, but then still saving, you know, which I know is hard for some people, because it's like, okay, you know, how do I balance it? What do I do? But it's really about like really understanding that the faster you get out of debt, especially consumer debt, even student loans, but primarily like consumer debt, and staying out of it, is the faster that more of the money that you bring home from whatever job you have now can work for you. Like, you know, it's not going back to pay something back that you bought years ago. So I would just like keep a positive and strong mindset around that. And then like, it's great when you hear hopefully stories like my story, and you get inspired by like other people doing it, because you realize like, wow, like this is possible. Sometimes you think, oh, that's like not for me, or that's for privileged, or like someone who has a lot of money, which, yeah, some of that is true. But when you see someone who kind of has a similar background and they're doing it, you're like, okay, what can I do to do that? So I think mindset and who you surround yourself with is super, super important on the journey.
And that wraps it up. Thank you so much for listening in today, and thank you, Undu, for an amazing interview. We look forward to the next episode. If there's a topic you'd like us to cover next, please leave that in the comment section below and let us know. Don't forget to follow Boa54 on Facebook and Instagram, and share this video and channel with your family and friends. Also, hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and the notification bell next to it, so you can keep learning about Africa and you don't miss anything. And if you just subscribed, welcome to the family, and see you guys in the next video.